Okay, Chapter 7, Staying Fat for Sarah Burns. I'm standing behind Britton and Jody at Lemry's desk, minutes before the second bell. Because my ears are tuned in like a phone tap from the Nixon White House, I can't help but overhear the conversation. We're thinking of dropping the course, Britton is saying to Lemry. We? Lemry says, eyebrows raised. Jody and me. Too demanding, Lemry asks. She doesn't mean it. Britton is a straight-A student. The guy has a memory like a fax machine. No, he says. I don't think the subject material is cut out for us. You don't have to be an astrophysicist to know Britton's speaking as if he has a turd in his back pocket, is going up as far up Lemry's feminist nose as is possible without the use of an exploratory probe. I'm having pronoun trouble here, she says. I, meaning you, is singular. Don't think the subject material is cut out for us? Britton nods while Jody shifts nervously from foot to foot. I put my mouth close to her ear. If you ever want a boyfriend who encourages freedom of expression, I whisper, dial 1-800-FAT-BOY. I have decided over the past few days that passive admiration may not be the best way to get a girl. If it were, Jody'd have been mine long ago. She smiles nervously and moves a step away from me. I just don't think it's healthy for us to sit by while people knock the Lord, Britton says, ignoring Lemry's challenge to separate himself from Jody. It's blasphemy, pure and simple. Then I would think the Lord would want you to stay and defend him. Lemry glances around Britton to Jody. Jody, is Mark talking for you? Jody nods. Yes, I guess so. We decided to take our electives together this year. Lemry nods. Well, I hate to be the one to break up your little alliance, but I'm an educator, not a dating service. And in order to drop a class after 5 days, you need my signature on your drop card. I'm willing to sign yours, Mark, on the grounds that you don't feel compelled to stand up for your convictions. And I don't want it to appear as if the school is challenging your religious beliefs. I won't, however, sign yours, Jody, because wanting to be with your boyfriend 23 hours a day does not constitute reason for a transfer. Of course, you're free to pursue the issue with the front office. No, Jody says without expression. That's okay. She turns to walk to her seat. I can feel myself falling out of love with Jody. It's like she's the Pillsbury Dough girl. Doesn't this girl ever tell anybody to go to hell? Britton stands stiff before Lemry's desk, his neck and face reddening. That isn't fair, he says, in the perfectly controlled tone that makes me want to cram a banana down his throat, then reach in and peel it. You're persecuting us because of our beliefs. Mark, Lemry says patiently, I said I was willing to sign your drop slip. A number of my beliefs may even match yours. Now, the bell is rung. Either give me your card or take your seat. Britton glances over at Jody, but she does not acknowledge him. Having forgotten why I was standing there in the first place, I walk toward the seat behind Jody, the one Britton seems about to vacate. I say just loud enough for him to hear. Is this seat taken? Britton crumples his card and walks briskly to his seat, and I willingly step away. Truth is, this class wouldn't be half the fun without his Jimmy Swaggart zeal. I return to my regular seat across the aisle to find a note folded neatly on the desktop. I open it and silently read, 1-800-FAT-BOY doesn't have enough digits to be a real phone number. Please advise. Sarah Burns sits across from me in what has become our nightly standoff. It occurs to me that if she actually is understanding every word I say and choosing not to respond, it pisses me off. Today I'm going to try to find out. Britton almost quit Lemry's class today, I say, in keeping with so-called normal conversation. Lemry would have let him go, but he tried to take his girlfriend with him. I didn't mention Jody's note or my lustful imaginings about her. Sarah Burns has never been someone with whom I felt comfortable talking about my illusory love life. Since she can't imagine having one of her own, talking about it seems cruel. I mentioned cat class. We even talked about you a little, I say. About what it must be like to be burned and everything. I think I see a flicker, but that road has dead-ended before. Actually, let me cut that short because you weren't there to give your permission or your input. Nothing. Dale Thornton thinks your dad had something to do with you getting burned. Sarah Burns' head jerks, and she penetrates far enough into my eyes for corneal surgery. Her jaw clamps tight, then as quickly as she looked, she's glazed over. That's what I thought, I say. You've been hearing me all along. You could talk if you wanted to, I'll bet. I thought you were too tough to pull an Elfoldo. Nothing. Anyway, I remembered what Dale said that day right before we closed shop on crispy pork rinds. How you almost tore him a new one when he said you knew about bad dads the same way he did. But the shock effect is gone. I'd badger her a little longer, but this girl has a will of steel. And that's it for today. I see the nurse headed our way and think better of mentioning Sarah Burns' response. If she's faking, there's a reason. And if I blow her cover, she'll get even. If you had your choice of having Saddam Hussein, or Joseph Stalin, or Adolf Hitler, or Sarah Burns after you, you'd pick A, B, and C only before you pick D. On the off chance she's not faking. If I'd just penetrated her catatonia for a second before it regained control, then nothing has changed. I'll try her out a few more times before I say anything to anyone. Shit, maybe I should grow up to be a psychologist. I plopped the note Jody left on my desk during Lemry's class 3 days ago on top of Ellerby's burger bun. What's this, he asks, as I snatch it back from between his greasy fingers. The legal document for my entry into heaven. I give him enough history to lend meaning to the strange message. No shit, he says, reading aloud as I hold the note. I didn't think Jody Mueller was real. I considered her Britain's Stepford wife. Yeah, well, reconsider. The girl has hidden taste. Did you give her your number? Not yet. Want me to ask the waitress to turn up the heat? What? Sounds like your feet are cold. She gave you that note 3 days ago. I'd have written my phone number in permanent marker on the back of Britain's alligator shirt before the class was over, if I was in your covetous state. I laugh. When the time's right. Listen, I've been meaning to ask you about the other day in Lemry's class. Ellerby chomps down on his burger. Which day is that? The day you talked about Sarah Burns, about shame? What's to tell? Ellerby, I've known you since the first day I turned out for swimming. You haven't uttered a serious sentence in 4 years. He smiles, paraphrasing the punchline from the old joke about the kid who went through his entire life without uttering a word. On his 17th birthday, his mother brought out a beautiful angel food cake with a sweet, rich, buttery frosting. The boy blew out the candles and began to cut the cake, then stopped and put down the knife. He said, Mother, I don't mean to be impolite, but I like chocolate frosting on my angel food cake. Well, of course, the whole family was astonished, and they all gasped and then cheered and patted him on the back. When his mother finally asked why it took him so long to speak, he said, Up till now, everything's been okay. Right, I say, watching Ellerby polish off the burger on the third bite. I just said what I believed. That's all, he says, swallowing. Yeah, I know. I heard you. It's just that I hadn't heard much about what you believed before that day. Or since. Ellerby sits back in the booth. Beliefs, he says. You better set aside a few hours before you get me started on that. I glance at my watch. I ain't going nowhere. I've wondered about you being a preacher's kid. Is that tough? I've never heard Ellerby complain. He shakes his head. Not with my dad. He nods toward the window, in the direction of the cruiser. How do you think I get away with driving that beast? I figured you must be as hard to handle at home as you are at school. He smiles again. Shit, man. If my dad said the word, I'd have it sanded down and primed by morning. I never thought of your old man as scary. He isn't scary. I do it out of respect. I'm aware I've known Ellaby almost 4 years, and I know almost nothing about his family. In fact, as often as not, I think of him as an orphan that my mother feeds. When my brother died, Ellaby says, his eyes almost dreamy. Times were hard. My mother couldn't quit crying, and my dad just lost himself in his work. I remember wishing for Sunday to hurry up because I knew I'd at least see him at church. Mom was so hurt, she couldn't even talk to me. And after about 6 months, I started thinking my brother was the only kid in the family worth being happy about. I got it in my head that it should have been me who died. When Dad finally started getting back to normal, he was so busy trying to take care of Mom and running the church and all, he seemed to have forgotten about me. I was just a little shit, but I packed my stuff in my brother's old gym bag and lit out for my uncle's. Only problem was, my uncle lives on the East Coast. Cops picked me up 5 blocks from home, called Dad. When he came down to the station, I ran and buried my face in his chest, and I babbled how sorry I was that it was Johnny instead of me. And Dad dropped to his knees with me and held me tight and told me right there, on the cold concrete floor, how bad he'd screwed up. Since that day, I haven't had a better friend. Ellaby's eyes are shiny, and he continues quietly. Believes, man, I changed the face of God for my old man forever. What do you mean? How? By making him explain to a 9-year-old kid why God would let a preacher's son die when he was going to grow up to be a preacher too. I told him how I thought God must be dumb, cheating them both out of a high draft pick like my brother. I said I thought if you were a preacher, God ought to give you a little extra protection, like the cops don't give each other tickets. What'd he say? Ellaby smiles. He said he thought so too, that he was as surprised as I was when it happened. Anyway, that's when he sat down and tried to figure out God's job description. You heard a piece of it the other day in class. You were a real hit with Britain. That stuff scares guys like Britain. Guys like him don't want to be accountable for shit. They fall to their knees on the deck when they should concentrate on swimming hard. That's why I said what I said about your friend Sarah Burns. She's been around all my life, and I've done nothing. Stayed as far from her as I could because I don't like thinking about her pain. But that's chicken shit, because once a thing is known, it can't be unknown. He sits back and folds his hands behind his head. Dad and I sit around and watch the God Network a couple of hours a week just to see what guys like Britain are thinking. Keep up with the enemy. Ellaby stands. That, my friend, is about as much philosophical bullshit as I can take in one night. Let's crank up the cruiser and spread the word. The cruiser slows to a stop in front of my house a few minutes before midnight. Get some sleep, Ellaby says. We've got a tough meet tomorrow. He squints into his side window. Look, isn't that Dale Thornton's wagon? I cut my hands around my eyes to block the light from the dash. Hard to imagine there's 3 of these things. As I say it, the door to the wagon swings open and Dale steps out. Wonder what he wants. You didn't steal anything from his garage the other night, did you? We meet Dale in the middle of the street. Hey, man, Ellaby says. Got her running, huh? Dale locks his fingers into his belt loops, a stance preceding the moment he used to kick my butt or take my lunch money. He says, yeah, no sweat. He stands, eyes shifting from one to the other of us. I'm on past conditioning. You pissed, man? Dale smiles uneasily. Nah, why would I be pissed? To tell you the truth, Dale, up until the other night, I never saw you when you weren't. It was just a guess. He looks at the ground. I wasn't always pissed, he says. I just needed to make sure all you guys were scared of me. It worked. What brings you out this late? Got to thinking, he says. The other night, you guys talking about Scarface. Yeah? Yeah. She really laid up in the crazy house like you said? I nod. Yep, why? Well, he says uneasily, we was pretty good friends there for a little bit. After that stupid newspaper, when she was kind of mad at you for going off to be a jock. Yeah. Yeah, helped me out of some tough spots. You know, let me talk without telling, stuff like that. I say, yeah. Thought I'd better tell you something. Told her I never would, but I don't want to see her rot in some crazy house. I got an aunt there. I wait, and Dale looks at the street again, kicking at a pebble. You gotta be careful what you do with this. I mean, who you tell. Okay. Can't just be telling anybody. Okay, I won't. Tell me. Reason I know them burns wasn't caused by no boiling pot of spaghetti is she told me different. What'd she say? She said her daddy pushed her face against a burning wood stove. The hammer hits my stomach with such force that my knees turn to rubber. Jesus Christ, are you shitting me? Dale casts a sideward glance at Ellaby, then back at me. You think I'd drive over to your house in the middle of the goddamn night to shit you? To Dale, the very worst thing in the world is to be called a liar. I need to remember that. No, I didn't mean that. I just meant... Jesus, Dale. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. Now she told me she was fixing to kill herself. God, I had no idea. How'd you stop her? Had to slap her around pretty good, he says. That ain't no way to go killing yourself. I glance over at Ellaby, who has just set a personal record for speechlessness. In the dim streetlight, I see his face is drained of blood. He says, Why didn't you tell someone? She told me not to. Yeah, Ellaby says, but ain't no buts. I said I'd keep my mouth shut, and that's what I done. Shit, who would have I told? I don't know, Ellaby says. Cops? Child protection? People? Dale snorts and spits on the ground. Shit. When was you born, man? Those guys don't listen to jokers like me. I give my word to Scarface I keep my mouth shut, and that's just what I done. Except for now. Don't want to see her rotting in some crazy house, like I said. Maybe we ain't such good friends anymore, but we was once. I put my hand on his shoulder, but he pulls away. Listen, I say. We'll figure out who to tell. We'll be careful. Thanks for coming here, man. Really, I owe you. Dale laughs. Give me your lunch money. Chapter 7 Analysis. So in Chapter 7, a few things start to take shape. Number one, we see that Britain sort of continues his place as an antagonist, and his connection to Jody, who is the person that Eric really is in love with, maybe is not as strong as we had anticipated, especially when we see the note where he passes her this note, 1-800-FAT-BOY, and she writes a note back basically saying, hey, there's not enough numbers in that phone number to call. Give me some advice here. Meaning, I want to talk to you. And boy, that throws him for a loop. You get the impression that Eric's a guy who's not used to taking chances, and he's not really ready for what happens if you take a chance and then you get a response. And so he's in uncharted waters here, doesn't really know what to do. He also gets a reaction from Sarah Burns. He tells her that, that Dale Thornton said that it wasn't an accident, that she was burned, and he does get a reaction from her, very fleeting, very short, but that leads to a couple of things. Thing number one, a conversation with Ellaby, where we are introduced, I guess, to his belief system and his concept of God and God interacting with people. It's very different than probably we expected for the son of a preacher, of a minister. And so that's very interesting. it's followed up very quickly by Dale Thornton coming and saying that the reason he knew that is because he had stopped Sarah Burns from committing suicide, which is big news, and that she told him that the reason she was burned and had those burns is because her father had purposefully burned her, shoving her face against a wood-burning stove. And that's just a level of cruelty that's sickening. And it's going to put Eric, I think, in a pretty tricky spot. I mean, if somebody told you that kind of information, you can't just do nothing. Dale Thornton did nothing, but kind of did something, right? He was supported Sarah, so that was something, but nothing to resolve it. Her father was still there. Her father was still making her suffer. And so, you get the feeling that situation can't stay the way it is. That's why she's in the mental hospital right now. So something's going to have to change. And so we see this new pattern emerging. Eric, who's not a person who takes chances, not with girls, not with anybody, having to take chances with girls. Okay, so, and that caused him to not really be ready. And he's looking like he's going to have to try to come up with something to do with Sarah Burns because of this burning on purpose information. And that's a really tricky situation. And that's going to be chapter 8. So continue reading and listening, and I will have fun in the next chapter.